Welcome to another edition of Carnivore Bites. I'm your host, Jeff Sherman, along with Dr. Eric Lopkin. And a busy week, a lot going on as usual, as always. I'll start off by we had the Chinese balloon debacle, and all the and on that same subject, Dr. Lopkin. We have more balloons in the news in terms of being shot down by very expensive missiles, about $200,000 a copy. Some calling it, an alien invasion. But the press secretary, probably the least capable of all time, floundering at being questioned by reporters, which is overall, I think the reporters are becoming more aggressive with the Biden White House. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm actually going to switch positions a little bit, and I'm going to defend Jean-Pierre on this because I honestly believe that she is not being given the information she needs to answer these questions.
I think that's a great point. I mean that in all sincerity, not just saying because I took the other view. I think you're probably right because not so much disinformation, but I don't think they have a clue. So no clue gives no clue information.
Yeah, I mean, she has to go out there. She has to face these questions.
And they don't know what the hell they're doing.
And the press is getting very frustrated at the lack of answers. The Senate is very frustrated at the lack of answers. We've seen bipartisan anger at the Biden administration for not telling them what's going on. And I honestly think when Jean-Pierre gets up to the podium, she doesn't have a clue. They haven't told her what to say. They haven't given her any information to be able to answer questions.
This administration's the height of incompetence.
Yeah, some of it is they don't know. They were able to identify some balloons as balloons, but not much more. They haven't been able to recover the wreckage of most of these balloons, so they don't really know what it was they shot down. They shot. I mean, and they shot one down.
What's the impact of this? Not so much militarily or intelligence. You can allude to that politically.
Yeah, if Biden does not come out and start talking to the American people and being more transparent, what is going to happen is more and more paranoia. People are wondering, why aren't they telling us? And when you have a lack of information, that's when the conspiracy theories start going crazy.
Yes, so no question. In a vacuum, that's when things happen. 100% agreed.
Exactly. And I think this is a very bad time to be doing that. We've had multiple balloons. We had the incursion near Alaska of 4 Russian fighter jets. We have Iran sending warships to the Panama Canal. We've got North Korea shooting off missiles. This is not a good time for people to not have faith in their government, especially when it comes to national security. And the only way he's going to be able to... The only way he's going to be able to...
75% think we're going in the wrong direction. I think that points to incompetency. And then you have to ask you, and our listeners would surely want to know your opinion on this. Is he capable of actually giving a briefing, a news briefing? I mean, that's not a rhetorical question. I mean that honestly.
I think he is capable of giving a briefing. That may be the only thing he's capable of doing that day. But as we saw during the State of the Union, that he's capable of reading a teleprompter. It's when he starts dealing with the unexpected that he can't handle it. So I think if they write out
the questions, he can't just give a briefing and walk away. He's got to take some questions. He's going to add more.
He's done that before.
You're right about that, but it's going to feed the conspiracy. He just walks away with his stupid smile. I think it's going to negatively impact him more. I think he's getting to a critical point where a break-even point, if you will, that he's doing this too much. He's walking away, and it all feeds the fire, the flames of incompetency, and people second guessing his ability, both friend and foe.
Well, again, you've seen now more Democrats coming out. I mean, Senator Richard Blumenthal came out and was critical of Biden's communications, that he's got to do more. For Richard Blumenthal to go against the party line is a
The
minor
political hack.
miracle.
Exactly. That is actually maybe the canary in the coal mine. Is that overstating it?
I don't think it is. I think his own party is now turning against him, and he's a convenient figure for the Democrats. The left are very happy with him because he's doing what they want. He lied to the American people about being a centrist. He just caved to the left. And in fact, Bernie Sanders just announced that he will not run for president in 2024. And why should he? Because he's got a puppet in the White House that's doing what he wants. But the
I would.
rest of the party is absolutely beside themselves at this point. And the only reason that they're still supporting him is because they don't want to risk Kamala taking over.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I'm not that on board with the rest of the party. I think the Democratic Party is increasingly becoming a freak show, and you talk about these moderate. It's like moderate cancers. I mean, it's almost like an oxymoron. I don't see it. Maybe like five moderates. I mean, if they're even associated with this freako party, how moderate could they be?
Well, no, we've been seeing a number when Biden started talking about his wealth tax again. A number of Democrats came out and said, "No, we're not supporting it. It's dead on arrival." Um, a couple of things that Biden came out with recently that the left was pushing. There are more and more people, Democrats, saying, no, we're not going to push for this. And the fact of the matter is, I think the reason that they can come out now is that the Republicans in the House are giving them cover because they know they can't get this stuff past the House anyway, so they don't have to take the heat from their party.
I think there's a very valid point without question. Yes, I would agree with that. I have another point on the whole temperature of the room, and I want your opinion on this, almost for my own self-serving reasons, but I'm sure our audience would like to hear your thoughts as well. State of the Union, you get two views. More conservative media saying it was a disaster, a horror show. More liberal media saying he nailed it. Your opinion and the actual, if you will, truth of the matter in your opinion.
Yeah, he did not nail it. I mean, it wasn't a bad State of the Union. I've seen worse, but it wasn't a good State of the Union either. And quite frankly, the Democrats know it wasn't a strong speech. And they showed that by going after Sarah Huckabee Sanders for her response because she gave a very strong response. I didn't agree with everything she said or the way she said it, but it was a very strong response. And the Democrats attacked her not for the speech, but for the state of Arkansas, where she is governor. And they were going after how horrible the state of Arkansas is, completely ignoring the fact that she has been governor for 6 weeks.
There you go. Yes, obviously grasping at the proverbial straws. So we'll see how this plays out. Um, I have the sense that things are collapsing around him. That is Biden. You look at even the inflation numbers. You know this, and I see this all the time, Dr. Lopkin, when I'm with just regular people on both sides of the fence. Maybe I know this sounds kind of obscure, but 6 months ago, people were thinking, "Oh, wow, I got a little shocked at the egg prices." Now people are really swallowing hard and saying, "Wow, this is really effing me up." So my point is, when people are starting to feel this, when they feel bad, then they take it out on other things like balloons and train wrecks, literally and figuratively, with the one in Ohio and Pete Buttigieg. So, do you agree with that assertion?
Yeah,
That
the inflation problem has made everything worse. The simple fact of the matter is, when inflation started, they came out, oh, it's transitory, it's not a
allied
big deal.
again, yes,
This was a year ago, and people have been dealing with the inflation for a year. And unfortunately for the American people, the inflation rate that just came out yesterday was higher than expected, but still lower than it has been. So it is sort of being reined in by the Fed's interest rate hikes. But the problem is the interest rate that the CPI shows doesn't tell the story of what the American people are feeling, because gas prices are going up, not so much because oil prices are going up, but because all of the states that removed the gas tax before last year's election and wanted to, now they're putting it back, so it's forcing gas prices up again. You're seeing the prices of food. The price of food has gone up much more
it's
than
skyrocketed
than the general inflation rate.
without a doubt.
So the parts of the economy that have a more direct effect on the general populace are what's suffering the highest inflation.
That
And
is the
that is
quintessential
adding,
point. That is the point, because in the numbers are things like housing, things that people buy once in a lifetime. People buy eggs maybe every week, and it's up a lot more than the 6.4%.
right. And while home prices have been fluctuating, they've gone up, they've gone down, rental prices are going up. So the price of food is going up, the price of shelter is going up. And that affects everything else, because those are the things you can't really cut back on.
That's the key. Yes, yes, you have to live in a shelter and you have to eat. You don't have to necessarily buy a house every year. And I think and they have to fill up your tank with gas. And if you're if you have an income, a family of like 60,000, not obviously upper middle class by any stretch of the imagination, but doable 3, 4 years ago. I mean, you are really up against it.
Yeah, it's become very difficult for the average family to make ends meet. And in fact, you're starting to see, in the stock market, we have earnings coming out, and you're seeing record earnings by fast food companies, because they're all offering these massive deals so that people can afford to eat there.
Which will have repercussions farther on down the line with healthcare costs,
Sure.
obviously. But that's another issue.
But people are trying to make ends meet, and that is a constant stressor. And the more that stress exists, the harder people are on every other issue. So,
$100.
they may not care that the balloons are coming. They may even believe that, oh, it's not a big deal. But the fact that Biden's not saying anything, and they're under the stress caused by the inflation, caused by just trying to meet day-to-day needs, comes out and, well, how dare he not tell us what's going on?
100%. Going back in history a long time ago, in 1973, Nixon actually probably could have survived Watergate. The, the linchpin in his collapse was the collapsing economy of 1973. So there's a lot to be said for that, and we'll have to monitor that. Was again, speaking of train wrecks, we had a literal train wreck in Ohio, and we have a figurative train wreck in Mayor Pete, the person that's checked all the boxes. The only thing he hasn't done is his job.
Yeah, Mayor Pete has completely failed on this.
Is he
The
finished?
The train, well, I think that's going to depend because this is a story that's going to go on for a while. And it's not going to be something that they're going to be able to escape because what happened is there was a massive chemical spill from
Yes.
this train wreck. And there's black smoke, covering East Palestine, Ohio. And people are terrified. They were told, oh, you should be drinking bottled water, don't drink the water, but you can move back into your homes. Meanwhile, folks that did go back in their homes within hours were suffering ill effects. This is something that's going to make these people sick, not just now, but years from now. We're going to start seeing cancer clusters generated by these chemicals. This is something that is going to be going on over and over. And the EPA has completely failed. They're going, oh, it's safe. It's Meanwhile, fish are dying, animals are dying, and the EPA is claiming it's
This
safe.
is
But
essentially another love canal 40
yes,
years later.
yes, and Buttigieg, I think this may be the final straw for him because already hearing people talk. Where is he? Why isn't he on the ground at this train wreck? And the fact of the matter is, we had a supply chain issue and he was on paternity leave. We had a rail strike and he was on vacation in Europe.
In Europe.
He has been a complete failure and he's never where he needs to be. And while this whole thing was going on, and the fact of the matter is we have a lot more train wrecks than people realize. We have several train wrecks in this country every day. And they passed the massive infrastructure bill, and instead of pushing for fixing the rails, which very clearly need to be fixed,
Very
Buttigieg was
antiquated.
Buttigieg was talking about putting speed cameras on highways. While
Something
this
that wait. How politically out of touch is that? And how elitist is this whole administration, but him in particular? That would go over like a lead balloon. Why don't you just F the whole country up?
Yes, I mean, it would be an abject disaster, but he is dedicated to his woke agenda. And in fact, while this catastrophe was going on, he was giving a speech at an event where he's talking about the big problem is that when they rebuild infrastructure, too many of the construction workers are not minorities. You know, it's like, really? Well, then talk to the Democratic unions because they're the ones that control that.
Yeah, it's very interesting. We'll see how this plays out. I think he was the golden boy of the Democratic Party, and I think he's severely tarnished, and I don't know if he can recover. Hopefully not, quite frankly, for the sake of this country. Politically, a big news this week. Nikki Haley announces that she is officially throwing her hat in the ring. Your comments and thoughts, Dr. Lopkin.
Haley is an incredibly capable woman. Between her work as ambassador to the UN and her work as governor, she knows how to run operations. I think she would be a fantastic president. Right now, she's the only hope the Republicans have. And I think at this point, there is enough of a movement for anybody other than Trump that she can beat him in the primaries. Now
Okay,
we'll
you've
we'll
said this.
see
Wait,
if
hold on. I have to interject on something because I think it's a big, big, huge point. And and I think our listeners would like your clarity on this. Then why are the polls still suggesting that Trump has a 55% majority lead, whatever you want to call it? And everyone I've talked to, there's a big disconnect. I don't know. I don't understand it. Maybe you can help me out. But everyone I talk to who's conservative, not Democrats, want him out. He want his ass out of here. And yet in the polls, it's like, oh yeah, no, everyone's at 4%, but him.
well, remember who's doing the polls. These are the same pollsters that predicted Hillary Clinton was going to win in a landslide. They want Trump to run because they want the Democrats to win another term. They always swing liberal. And we're seeing that. The fact of the matter is, these polls have been so out of touch with America for now 8 years. I mean, maybe even longer.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of that, but also people not giving their real opinion, and it's also too early in the process. It's not identifiable. There's no momentum going. I do think that his shtick is completely over. Again, I've talked an unscientific survey. I get it. All my conservative friends say the shtick that worked and the marketing, I'll use the term loosely, strategy that worked in 2016 is just not happening. He's calling DeSantis meatball. I think has exactly the opposite effect. And then getting his shit together. What is he doing? You think he might have the ability to learn a lesson? I doubt it. He's incapable of that. What is he texting or tweeting? Rihanna's a loser and blah, blah, blah. It's like, stop it, please.
Yeah,
I think he
well,
just feeds the fire of Trump fatigue and Trump exhaustion.
he does, but you also have to remember that at this point in the campaign, first of all, as far as the polls are concerned, nobody else was running. So are they going to support Trump? Sure, because there's nobody else running against him. But also, most people at this point, unless they're really into politics and they're searching the stuff out, they haven't heard from Trump. They haven't been going. Take a look at the events he's having. They're a shadow of what they used to be. He's not getting the audiences he was.
Okay, we need to talk about that a little bit and address that. Is that again another proverbial canary in the coal mine? I mean, he was drawing on, let's say, 15,000, seat audiences, and what is it down to now? To put it in perspective, Doctor Lopkin.
Yeah, I think it's down to about a quarter or a third of what he used to get.
That's
People are not
obviously
people are
pretty
not
indicative.
yeah, people are not turning out. And remember, every time he had an event, they used to put it on the news. It was,
I
nobody's
even
been
heard
covered.
him.
Yeah, nobody's been covering him. So there are people who are, we talked about this with Hillary Clinton, that when she went away, she had higher numbers, and it was when she came back into the public eye that people went, "Oh no, I can't stand her." Trump is having the same effect. If he's out in the public eye, people go, "Well, I did like his policies," and but when he comes back into the public eye and people see him in a debate and hear his commercials, they're going to go, "Oh no, I can't. I forgot about this.
I think that
I
is
can't."
well said, Dr. Lopkin, 100%, especially if he does that juvenile bullshit that worked in 2016 called Meatball, Ron, and, whatever Haley. It just doesn't ring the same. It's like going to a Stones concert now. It just ain't 1991. It's just not.
And the thing is, in 2016, most of the Republican candidates that he ran against were not terribly well known outside of their own states. So when he called them names, it was funny. It was someone you weren't familiar with. He could be right. Who knows? Now he's going after Ron DeSantis, who already has a national profile. People know what he's done. Calling him a meatball, it's like, well, okay, so you're a Democrat now?
I would think that's
It's
well said, yes. And also it's just juvenile. It gets to the whole thing of like people you don't have to comment on Rihanna. In other words, why you the whole thing was he lacked presidential presence, not physically, but his demeanor, his actions. Do you really give a shit about what Rihanna did at the halftime show,
no.
lip syncing and all? You're supposedly an ex-president of the United States, so get your shit together. And I think people get a little pissed off about it. I know I am.
And I mean, let's be fair. The Super Bowl has been terrible for the last decade or so, at least.
God, I mean, they're going to get like
The fact,
a cat show soon.
yeah,
They're
I
really
mean
digging
the
up some
fact,
real crap.
yeah, the fact that it was a poor performance, who cares? I mean, most people I know use the halftime show to go get more food, to go to the, it's they're not watching.
No, I wonder if they watched this though, or even paid attention, or even realized this. But for the first time, they played the Black national anthem before our own national anthem, and Kerry Lake refused to, which was a certainly a tweeted out moment, refused to stand. Your thoughts? First, the Black
Well,
national anthem
I,
and her actions.
honestly, she was right. There is no black national anthem. The country has a national anthem, and it's for everybody, for whites, for blacks, for Asians, for Hispanics, for Christians, for Jews. It is one national anthem. And you don't stand up when, when Rihanna started playing, you don't stand for what they're calling the black national anthem.
I would agree with that, but it doesn't get to the bigger issue of woke corporatism. I mean, the NFL succeeds in spite of themselves. Okay, it goes for a long history of the NFL. People like myself who grew up on it. It's really hard to screw up the NFL, but they're doing everything they can to do that. And it gets into the whole thing of woke corporatism, and I think that's played a role in Disney's um, poor performance over the last several years. I believe they just laid off 7,000 of their workforce, and that translates into 4% of their employee base. Your comments on that? They're not the Disney that we grew up with, obviously.
No, Disney, is the poster child for go woke, go broke. Their movies have been failing at the box office because they're pushing their woke agenda. They're about to lose their special status in Florida for Walt Disney World.
Because of their
And
wokeism.
yes, and to the point that they know they're going to lose it, and they've decided not even to fight because they know if they fight it, it's going to make them look worse.
Isn't that corporate malfeasance? Isn't their duty to increase stockholders' equity?
Yes, that is the job. The board of directors' job in a public corporation is to ensure that the shareholders are protected. And the shareholders don't want their money going to fight Florida. They don't want their money to push woke agendas. And you're starting to see more and more companies either go silent about it or actually say no, we're not pushing an agenda. It's not in our best interest for, as for business.
I think that's absolutely true. I see that happening slowly because there's a
Yeah.
backlash. And it's not because they've changed their viewpoint, it's because it translates to the bottom line to such an effect, there's no walking away from it. But speaking of walking away, Barry Dillard, I thought had an interesting, not earth shattering, but interesting observation with someone who spent his whole life in the media, a very successful person. And he came out with the announcement or the proclamation, excuse me, that the Oscars are dead. And I agree with him. And I think his theory is spot on. And his theory is and was that the Oscars that I grew up with, I remember even as a young kid staying up at night and who won the Oscar? No one gives a shit anymore because no one's going to there's no shared experience about movie going anymore. Your thoughts?
I think it's even more than that. I mean, he's right that there's no shared experience with movie going,
Like, did
but
you see
I
The
think
Godfather? Did you see,
it's more
whatever,
right. It's
Temple
more
of
than
Doom,
just the
whatever?
Oscars, though, because we've seen the Emmys have dropped their ratings, the Grammys have dropped in the ratings, but the Tonys were, barely registering at, at all anyway. But because people are tired of these actors, actresses coming up and telling the rest of us how we should be living and
Yes.
using this platform to rant about what's wrong with America and how dare you not do what we're telling you, despite the fact that they don't live up to what they're
And
saying.
in spite the fact that they're the beneficiaries of, let's just say, a high school diploma at best, and they're talking about global warming. Yeah, okay, they don't even know how to do long division. But yes, I agree with that. I think it's a combination of both, actually. I think even with the Grammys and other things, is people don't have that shared experience. People are streaming media and all the other types of things they're doing. But certainly the overarching situation is the whole wokeness, and and it goes into the Disney thing of their layoffs. You go to Disney, that was a safe zone. Okay, you go with your family, and for all the crap you go through all week, you can have a good time. You don't want to have your noses rubbed in some bullshit woke agenda. And I think that's as simple as it is, don't you think?
Yes.
It's
I
not
mean,
that much more complicated.
Disney used to be the brand that you knew if you went to a movie, if you put in a DVD for your kid, you didn't have to worry about what they were seeing. And that's no longer the case. And I mean, Disney especially, they went way too far because for years they had virtually no product for young boys. And to remedy this, they went out and they bought Marvel and they bought Star Wars so that they had product for young boys. And then they went in and they made both of them woke. So it's like, well, because we want the girls to be able to see this. It's like, no, no, no. You've already had the lock on the girls market. The problem was you were missing half of your target audience. You went
Which
in to
really
fix
bodes the
that.
question, though. Doesn't it really bode the question that sometimes you were born on third base and you think you hit a triple? You're Disney, just like the NFL. It's really hard to f that up, but they do it anyway. My point is, it's kind of common sense. You don't have to be a marketing genius to articulate what you've just done. Meaning, doesn't it resonate? It's it's incompetency.
I don't know that it's incompetency. I think it's a matter of misplaced focus. They're more concerned about a political agenda and a woke agenda than they are being a business and serving the shareholders,
Then they
serving
should
their
go in the
customers.
they should go in the not for profit, work for United Way or whatever. They have no business being in business.
No, and that's the problem. We said earlier we're starting to see more and more businesses move away from that. But if you take a look at the businesses that are doubling down on woke agendas and the ones that are moving away, all of the ones that are doubling down are all based in California.
Surprises, surprise,
Yeah,
surprises. I think Gomer Pyle used to say. Speaking of surprises, this is no surprise to me that how the stars are setting. Cuomo, once the darling primetime celeb, if you will, of CNN 9 o'clock spot. I think the creme de creme of spots. He is now on News Nation, and without the backdrop of CNN, has managed to go from 100 and I think 20,000 viewers when he first started. He is now down, drum roll please, to 35,000 viewers. That is pretty much in the environment, in the realm of public access TV, along with Don Lemon, who's now drove that the morning show from I don't know how many listeners to now it's less than 250. I think his days are numbered. And for the first time, streaming TV is now beating traditional cable, if you will, or broadcast networks. So your thoughts on our friend Mr. Cuomo? That's a big achievement to have something up like that.
yeah, I'm
He's getting
still
paid over $1 million, by the way.
Yeah, I'm still unsure as to why News Nation hired him. News, I think they just went, oh, look, he's a name we can get cheap. Let's grab him. For our listeners that are not familiar with News Nation used to be WGN America, which started as a superstation out of Chicago.
Yes.
And when they switched to News Nation, their stated goal was they wanted to be a news network from the heartland of America, from the Chicago area. That wasn't based in New York, Los Angeles, or Washington. And they have, unlike the other 24-hour news networks, News Nation actually only provides news from about 7 o'clock at night. Yeah, they might have already started at 6 through prime time, and the rest of the day they air reruns of sitcoms and things like that. They don't have 24-hour news coverage. But what I found hysterical is that there's the sitcoms they run tend to be more conservative. Last Man Standing, which was always a very conservative show, is aired constantly on the network. So they had a more right-leaning audience, and then they stuck Chris Cuomo on there, and now they're wondering why their viewers are turning him off.
Again, Gomer Pyle, surprise,
Yeah.
surprise. And what do you think of Mr. Lemon? I was talking with some friends. I think he gets paid $10 million a year. You just do the math. Okay, I don't think you really need a calculator. That's a lot per viewer. I think and some of his actions, like the hoodie and pissing off his co-host, is actually somewhat talented. I think his day. They're just waiting for the opportunity.
I think they're holding off on firing Lemon until they've got a good bench of people to replace him with. And of course, there's a reason that Lemon is the last man standing from the CNN liberal wacko brigade. And that's because of equity. It's, well, we can't fire him yet because he's a black guy, so we can fire the white people, but we can't fire the black guy. So they're holding on to him, but that's not going to save him forever. As his ratings drop, I honestly believe that Warner Discovery is just giving him enough rope so he hangs
There
himself,
is no the
so that they
proverbial rope that hangs himself.
so
Yeah.
that they can go, look, we gave him every opportunity and he failed miserably, so we have to get rid of him so that nobody can claim it's racist.
Speaking of failing miserably, we have California always in the spotlight, faces a potentially imminent power grid collapse. And an interest, speaking of collapsing, 500,000 people have already fled. And the Utah governor basically made an impassioned plea. If you're from California, please stay there. Utah, by the way, being the state that has grown the most over the last couple of years.
Yeah, because when liberals leave California, they're not smart enough to leave their liberal ideology behind. They've already seen it fail. Now they want to go to other states and let's get those states to be more liberal and fail. So, of course,
you would think the opposite
want...
would be true, but obviously it's not, which is sad. You're fleeing for your very life.
It's like your decisions were what made the state fail. The woke policies, the insane environmental policies.
Oh, by the way, just to put that in perspective, I think they put it into law by 2033. They're going to outlaw the sale of any gasoline-powered cars.
Gas and diesel cars, and there are a couple of left-leaning states that had actually passed laws that if California passes an environmental regulation, they will follow it. So California passing that law is also going to affect several other states. And in fact,
Connecticut's not one of them, but you never know.
We might be. But
I think we are.
This is even a bigger problem because the European Union just ratified the same law. They're giving it till 2035. And if we
I need to just interject and ask a question or an observation. Want your comment on that, on this? I know Rumsfeld to the old and the new Europe, but I think he was kind of right. The old Europe, the traditional Europe, is just failing miserably. You look at even England, Great Britain, in terms of standard of living. I mean, talk about wokeism and left leaning idea. It's just destroyed the once engine of social and economic growth. Finished.
it really has. And it's, they've all across Europe they had socialist programs, and here in America these programs are what the democratic socialists tend to point to. It's like, well, we're not talking about socialism like Venezuela. We want programs like socialism in Europe. But
No,
the
we don't.
problem is there isn't enough money on the planet to support these programs. And yeah, I always found John Lennon to be a ridiculous hypocrite because he's singing, imagine no possessions. And he was a well known communist, but he fled Europe for America so he wouldn't have to pay high taxes.
Yes, it's it's always like we said with liberalism. It's always do as I say, not as I do, a la Bernie Sanders and others. Uh, Two other noteworthy bits of information and a little bit chilling, both of them. That the Dutch Air Force, speaking of old Europe, shot down or chased or shot down a Russian fighter, was it, or drone right near the um, right near the Polish, or chased a Russian fighter. I'm staying corrected. Very close to the Polish border. Again, not really. I think it's this whole thing is underreported in terms of the danger we are facing by potential escalation in Ukraine.
Yeah, this is part of what's going on with Ukraine. The fact of the matter is the fighting is not staying within the borders, especially when you've got missiles flying and drones flying
And the
and
longer it goes on, the
fighter
more that's the
jets.
probability.
And other neighboring nations have already sounded the alarm that they expect attacks on them from Russia. Russia is not doing well in the Ukraine, but that's certainly not going to stop them. But it is absolutely amazing that they are dead set on expanding. And it is, nobody wants them to expand. Even the Russian people don't particularly want them to expand, but Putin is dead set on it. And what
Okay, I'll
we've
push back on that.
seen,
Yes, I agree with
yep,
Putin is dead set, but some, I think, misguided people in the West, America included, obviously, are doing everything they can to widen this conflict. Yeah, things like
well, honestly,
sending,
I don't think.
give them air cover. Are you kidding me? What if an American fighter jet shoots down a Russian plane? That's probably not a good idea.
Yeah, I'm actually going to disagree with you on that. I mean, yes, we don't want this to escalate any more than it already has. But the fact of the matter is, this is not a war for Ukraine. This is a war against Russia. And Russia is not going to stop with the Ukraine. And in fact, just over the weekend, Moldova, Moldovia's president has said that Russia is plotting to overthrow their government. This is a matter of Russia taking countries over. They don't want to reunite the Soviet Union. Putin has lost his mind and he wants to take over the planet. And we are seeing this time and time again. And the fact of the matter is, Russia needs to be stopped. And
But
yes, I
not
don't
at
want
the
to see the
expense of a
fighting.
direct, not at the expense of a direct conflict, which people are not getting between America and Russia. Yes, are we more powerful than them? Yes. But do they have more nuclear weapons? Who cares if more or less, whatever. They have enough of weapons to destroy the world 50 times over. Not a good idea.
Yeah, but the fact of the matter is, even with Ukraine in the middle, this is no different than Afghanistan was. This is already a direct war between the West and Russia. People like to pretend it's not because Ukraine is in the middle, but it's already doing that. And if we had a commander in chief that had half a brain, he would have ended this already, not with more military strikes, but by ramping up oil and natural gas production to the point that nobody would be buying Russian oil and gas. Economically, if we moved forward and actually produced what we are capable of producing, we could have ended this 6 months ago because Russia wouldn't have had the money to keep going.
Yes, but you're missing one big point. The
We don't
ideology,
have a commander in chief that
well, that's
has
number
half
one.
a
Number
brain.
two, with the liberal psychology, there is nothing more sacred than global warming. So the
And
very thought of increasing domestic production runs even more contrary to national security and world security. And I believe that's actually true. They cannot
yeah, and
come to grips with even in the short term doing that.
no, they keep saying, "Oh, climate change is the most dangerous thing we're facing." No, you know what? It really isn't, because if Iran gets nuclear weapons, if Russia starts moving into other European countries, there's a good possibility that a large segment of the population isn't going to live long enough to
And I would
see the
agree with that
results of climate
100%.
change.
Yes, but yes, the fascination with climate change is mind-boggling, and also what's mind-boggling is having a president that is incapable of any. And these strategies are not exactly, mensa Kennedy. It's common sense, but obviously he lacks all of that. But this whole climate change, really, from a top down, Obama said that at the State of the Union, I don't know, years ago, '08 or whatever it was, uh, 2010, whatever. That climate change is the largest threat facing the world, and I think he was wrong in that. And he also basically was the person that empowered Iran, not just with the nuclear deal, which was an abomination, but in allowing them to land one of our drones, which I can understand he might not have been able to stop or prevent, but even Dick Cheney, not a guy I like in any way, said I can't believe he didn't take out that drone, meaning send some cruise missiles. Now they re-engineered it, or not re-engineered, reverse engineered it, and guess what? They're now second to America in drone technology. Thank you, Obama.
Yeah, because they got a hold of our tech, reverse
Yep.
engineered it. But I'm actually going to give Obama a little bit of credit. But the problem is that people went off the reservation in terms of semantics. Is climate change the largest problem we have? Yes, it is, because it is a massive problem. But is it the most immediate problem we have? No. There are things we need to take care of first. So,
Agreed with
and
that. Yes.
that's the difference. We're not saying climate change isn't important. It is the largest problem the planet faces.
I
But
agree 100% with that. Yes.
it is it is not the most immediate problem, and the fact of the matter is you're not going to be able to make any real progress on climate change until you deal with the Chinese, with India, with these countries that are focused on their own economic growth and economically taking over the planet, which is, China's stated goal, with coal, oil, gas, and they don't burn it as cleanly as we do.
Not even. as cleanly. They're back in 1950. There's no such thing
Yeah.
as any kind of a cleaning technology. But again, back to the drone issue. Do you blame Obama for not blowing that up?
Oh, absolutely.
I do.
There was no excuse for allowing our technology to fall into Iranian hands. One missile, they should have targeted the drone once they lost control of it, blown it the hell up so that it was in a million little pieces and they couldn't re engineer it.
It was he Iran's best friend, bestie, to use today's phraseology that they've ever had. They went from on the brink, just mind-boggling.
He really was. And I think the problem is, and it's the same problem we've seen with China from several administrations. It was his idea that the best way to deal with Iran was to bring them into the community of nations. And the
And that has
problem with
worked.
that
When has that
is
ever worked,
it
please?
right, it never works
Never.
because the countries they want to bring into this community don't follow the community's rules.
I'm really kind of not surprised. It is rather you could scratch your head material that it's never been registered to them, to the elites, to the people running this. That is something that they may want to be cognizant of. But I thought it was a great show, and we'll be back next week and tell our listeners about how they can contribute and maybe give their feedback into what what discussion points they enjoyed, what they want more on the show. Maybe you can run that by them.
Yeah, if you go to exvadio.com/connect, that's exvadio.com/connect. Fill out the form. Let us know what you're thinking. What do you want to hear us look into more? What's your opinion on what we've talked about? And of course, while you're there, you can listen to every episode of Carnivore Radio at exvadio.com/podcasts, as well as the Carnivore Radio website, Apple Podcasts app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Amazon Music, Audible, and other platforms that respect freedom of speech.
No question about it. And I think our future does seem brighter than Mr. Cuomo, don't you think?
Yeah, I honestly think we're getting more listeners than Chris Cuomo is, and hopeful, and we keep growing while his audience keeps shrinking.
And that's as it should be. I'll see you next week, Dr. Lopkin.
We'll see you then.